Ciao, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. By the time you're seeing this video, maybe you are sick and tired of pumpkin. I don't blame you, but I recently just made a video off of 3 different squashes where I roasted a giant sugar pie pumpkin, and there was so much left over of the pumpkin butter I made and just the plain pumpkin puree that I made from it. It was sitting in my fridge, and I am the queen of, if I tell you guys to make something, I better show you all the different ways to use it, some examples of what you can do with that roasted pumpkin. So I'm making 4 delicious Mediterranean diet pumpkin snacks. Too sweet, too savory. Side note here, I am taking some traditional recipes and putting my spin on it. This is a very modern Mediterranean thing. These are not authentic recipes, but I just love these foods and I want to kind of create them seasonally and add a little seasonal spice to them. For the savory, we're going to be doing a roasted garlic and herb hummus, garlic confit with the herbs, and so they just become super melty, super soft garlic cloves drenched in this oil, and then I use that infused oil of the garlic and all those herbs in this hummus too, with that pumpkin, with those chickpeas, full of protein, full of healthy fats and delicious, delicious flavor. And the other savory recipe we're gonna be doing today are little tiny flatbreads, because I love bread. In the Mediterranean, bread is everywhere and all throughout the day, but especially for a snack, a delicious combination of that crusty, chewy bread, the sweet, delicious spiced pumpkin butter with the orange and the cinnamon and the cardamom and the cloves, and then that smoky cheese on top and the delicious sage. Oh, not to mention gooey, jammy, caramelized onions. And then for the 2 sweet, we're gonna be doing a pumpkin swirl yogurt bar. So we're gonna be using up the last of that pumpkin butter, swirling it in a yogurt mixture that is baked on top of a beautiful pecan crust. And they're kind of a riff off cheesecake bars, just a lot healthier. They're just a lot more higher in protein. Not that cheesecake is bad, it's not. It's just if you wanna eat kind of a lighter snack, not so sweet snack, they're not as like velvety as cheesecake. They definitely taste yogurty, but I love yogurt, so I don't mind that. And they're full of protein from the yogurt, the eggs, and then the delicious sweetness swirled throughout of that pumpkin butter. It hits the perfect spot. And lastly, we're gonna be baking some delicious ricotta pumpkin zeppole. So I grew up making zeppole with my aunt and my great aunt and my grandma, donuts covered in sugar. And I wanted to take a riff off of that today with making pumpkin donuts, but we're baking them because it's just easier in my mind. Toss them in some pumpkin pie spiced brown sugar for a delicious touch. 4 pumpkin snacks that I'm gonna be sharing today. Some high protein, some gluten-free, some full of all of the gluten and the dairy. So hopefully there's something for everybody in this video. So I'm gonna shut up now and we're gonna get into the first pumpkin snack recipe. For recipe number 1, we are gonna be doing the pumpkin swirled yogurt bars. So I already prepped the crust, which is a riff off of that graham cracker crust that we all love for cheesecake. And I used some pecans, oat flour, almond flour, and coconut oil, and then a little bit of salt to round out all the flavors, and sugar to sweeten it up. But I wanted to get kind of more of that shortbready, graham crackery kind of feel, so I made a nice thin crust of that, and I thought the pecans would pair so well with the pumpkin, of course. And so I par baked that, so you want to get it till it's baked, but you don't want like any coloring on it. You don't want it to be like golden brown or anything, because we're gonna go in now with the filling. You don't have to use oat flour if you don't have it. I would recommend though a more sturdy flour than almond flour. I wouldn't just use more almond flour. Almond flour is fatty and gritty, so you want a flour that doesn't really have fat. That's why I use the oat flour, which is so easy to make yourself. You just grind up a bunch of oats in your blender or food processor, or you could use all-purpose flour, whole wheat flour, a gluten-free all-purpose flour if you're trying to still keep it gluten-free. So those are some options for playing around with the crust. And then for the filling, which is so simple to whip together, I'm just gonna whisk it all right now. Whole milk Greek yogurt. I say it in every single video. We're not afraid of fat here. Fat is a wonderful thing. It tastes delicious, and the thing is, when you eat fat, you feel satisfied, and so you don't need to eat a lot, or you don't keep craving more things. It's natural to have cravings, and then when we like let ourselves eat those cravings, we stop. Maybe this isn't everybody. For me, I've experienced in the past not letting myself have any fat in yogurt or almond butter, any fats throughout the day, and then I'm craving so much even though I've eaten plenty throughout the day, and it's because you need to be satiated. Our body needs fat, and it's less processed. Non-fat, you have to process it more to remove that fat. So we want less processed things in our life. Let's keep things simple, you know what I mean? How they're supposed to be. I have a scale here just because it always helps me when I'm baking Look how thick it is. Oh, I love Greek yogurt. If you don't want to use Greek yogurt, you could use skyr or some other like really thicker style yogurt. Or if you're dairy free, I would recommend using a really thick coconut yogurt. Like I've mentioned before, not sponsored, I just love the brand Kalina because their yogurt is so thick like this, but it's dairy free. So along with the Greek yogurt, a little bit of vanilla. Everything's healthy in moderation, but this is just a little bit more extreme healthy. Since I'm treating it like where I want it to be a little bit more high protein, I'm going in with 1 full egg, but then I'm just gonna do egg whites. It just helps with the texture and helps make it a little bit more firm and not so eggy. I'm just gonna do a little bit of separation here. There's so many methods of how to separate an egg yolk. I mean, honestly, the best is with... what I was saying is there's so many different ways. Honestly, the best way to separate a yolk from a white is with your hands. Just let it fall through your fingers. The last wet ingredient to go into the yogurt and egg mixture is the sugar. I'm going in with 1/3 cup of maple. You want to use like real high quality, real deal maple. If you're not, oh my God, the neighbors are dealing with their trash cans right now. Guys, this is not the Food Network. I don't know what you were expecting, but it's definitely nothing professional, ever. I don't think I'll ever be professional, but that's okay. We like reality. This is real life. Cooking in the real world. So anyways, if you don't like maple syrup, totally fine. Go for honey or agave or just regular sugar. Now I'm just gonna be pouring the yogurt mixture onto the par baked crust. And you wanna make sure that the yogurt is evenly spread out. So I'm just kind of tilting it. And now for the really, really fun part. So I have some pumpkin butter here. And I'm gonna take a spoon. You can do this with apple butter. You could do this with jam, fig jam. You can make like a gingerbread crust instead of a pecan crust. Like there's so many ways to like have fun with this. You could make it like a nutmeggy flavoring so it could taste like eggnog. Because this apple butter is so thick, I'm just gonna do dollops all around. But a really fun way to do it would just be lines across the top and then you pull the knife back and forth. So I'm just gonna dollop all over the top of this yogurt mixture. Some can be smaller, some can be bigger. So you just take a knife, cut through all of those dollops and swirl it. Be really careful not to do is like keep swirling as much as it's like addicting to make all these swirls and you wanna make it kind of perfect. As a perfectionist that never gets anything perfect, I just wanna keep going, but I gotta stop because it starts to mix in with the yogurt and you wanna get that swirled effect. So I'm gonna pop these into the oven. The cat's playing with a ping pong ball. Into the oven it goes. Oh my gosh, guys, I already took a bite because I couldn't resist when I cut them, which I did a horrible job cutting them. I did this tilted, I made some bigger, some smaller. They turned out beautiful and they turned out delicious. It's the best recipe. I mean, they're all so good, but these are sweet, but just the right amount of sweetness. The pecans in the crust take this to the next level. The perfect chewy texture, creamy on top, crumbly, and just perfect. They're so good. I love this recipe. I hope you try it. So these are delicious. Let's move on to recipe number 2. So for recipe number 2, we are making a delicious roasted garlic and herb pumpkin hummus. So to start out, 2 cans of chickpeas are already in the blender or food processor, whichever you prefer or you have. High-speed blender. I peeled all of the chickpeas. It took me about 15 minutes because it helps with digestion and it helps for the creamiest. I don't know why I had to say it that way, but the creamiest hummus, in my opinion. There's a lot of different hacks and things of how to make hummus. One of them, in my opinion, is peeling the chickpeas or making the chickpeas yourself. And when you go to cook the chickpeas, I think you put baking soda, and that helps separate the skins from the flesh of the garbanzo bean or the ceci or the chickpea. Let's talk about the beautiful star. As much as pumpkin is the star, so is this confit. So there's 2 ways, in my opinion, to kind of roast garlic. Cut off the top of a head of garlic, put it down in some foil and roast it, and then you can like squeeze it out of the skin and it's this creamy, garlicky, roasted, sweet goodness. There's also confit, which I really wanted to do because I wanted to infuse the olive oil at the same time. So I wanted a double thing here. I wanted roasted garlic, but I also wanted a delicious, flavorful olive oil. So I drenched a whole head of peeled garlic with olive oil and threw in a bunch of the woodsy fall winter time herbs that I buy in packs and don't use all of them. So they sit in the fridge. The leaves start to get sad and dried and a little bit black, and Caroline doesn't do waste. I'm not a fan of it. And so what better way to use it where you don't actually have to use the herb itself, you just need to use the fragrance and the flavor and the oils that the herb gives off when you roast it in this oil. So the oil now is infused with all of the herbs, all of the garlic. I will only be using the oil and the garlic from this beautiful jar. I will not be using the herbs. I think the herbs have done their thing. Tahini. Tahini needs to be stirred. It's a natural nut or seed butter, so the separation happens where the oil comes to the top and then everything else is on the bottom. Keep stirring. You're gonna think it's not gonna come together. It's chunky, and then all of a sudden it's this beautiful, smooth, creamy, drippy paste. The queen of zest has her tiny little lemon, just a little bit of lemon juice to brighten everything up. So you can't really taste the lemon, you're just like, ooh, zingy, delicious, preservative goodness. And then lastly, some roasted pumpkin. Honestly, it's hit or miss. Sometimes squashes have a ton of flavor. Sometimes squashes taste like nothing. This one kind of tastes like nothing, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. That's why pumpkin pie spice is what's so trendy, not the literal pumpkin itself. 4 ounces of pumpkin. Going in with a whole 1/3 cup of tahini because I really love the flavor of tahini. Straight into the blender. I put a whole head of garlic in this, and so we're not gonna use all of this today, all of the garlic or all of the oil. I'm gonna go in with 1/2 cup of oil first. And then if you have oil left over, you can put it in salad dressings. You could top it on top of roasted vegetables, roasted chicken, some meat. It's just a super flavorful garlicky herb oil now that you have as a pantry staple. So even if you don't want to make this recipe of hummus, you should definitely make this oil because it's a great way to use up shriveled up garlic cloves that you have that are left over, a bunch of herbs that you're trying to use. It depends how much you love garlic. I like it, I don't love it. So I'm gonna fish out probably like 3 giant cloves in here. If you want, do like 4 or 5. About 1 tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of olive oil, lemon juice. Use your brain, Caroline. Ooh, there's a cut. Ow. Well, it's clean now. Sale, we need salt. We have everything in here and I'm gonna blend it up. The secret to creamy hummus, dropping ice cubes in. So you just see that it's finally about 70% pureed. You wanna drop in 3 to 4 ice cubes. More if it's not blending up, but the ice cubes is not, so there's not like a ton of water. The ice cubes release slowly and just help with keeping it smooth and creamy. I've already tasted this as I went along, and first of all, it is so thick and so creamy. I'm kind of upset. I wish it was more orange, but you know, can't win them all. The pumpkin flavor is there. It's kind of tangy and squashy and vegetable-y ever so slightly in the background, but all I taste is beautiful, beautiful roasted garlic. And you do get slight herbs from that oil that was infused with, did you see that? With those herbs, Caroline, you can't do anything. Anyways, I'm gonna put this in the fridge for a little bit and let it firm back up before I start plating it. I'm actually broiling leftover chickpeas and some herbs right now to get them crispy to top. I'm gonna top this with pomegranates because pomegranates are in season and I need a little bit of variation of color to this beautiful dip just for presentation. Oh, and pumpkin seeds, so we know that this is pumpkin hummus. But I think this is beyond snacks. These 2 savory snacks that I'm showing you are also kind of great appetizers, party hors d'oeuvres. I mean, we're in holiday season, we're in hosting season. You show up with the most gorgeous roasted garlic dip. Granted, everyone might hate you because kissing underneath the mistletoe might be a little bit hard if your breath smells like roasted garlic, but I wouldn't care. I mean, garlic's delicious. Yes, Caroline, that's what you're worried about, the mistletoe. Anyways, a really, really delicious also way to make this hummus if you didn't want to do the roasted garlic, but you did want to do the pumpkin. Cumin, coriander, cinnamon, cardamom, cloves, turmeric, ginger, spices. Spices in hummus are so delicious. This is so good. So I'm gonna scrape this blender clean, in all honesty, and we're gonna move on to recipe number 3. Recipe number 3, we are moving on to the mini little flatbreads. So I'm gonna take this pizza dough that's been sitting out for about an hour, and we're gonna make little tiny dough balls. So I'm just gonna cut like a palmful of dough at a time, kind of roll it, put it into a ball, set it off to the side there. Make sure you have a lot of flour because sticking is probably the worst part. And I was gonna actually make the sweet recipe as the third recipe in this video, but I realized I have a pizza stone and I need it to cool down before I pack up and leave. So we just need to get that pizza stone used and so it can start cooling down. You can make them as big or as small as you want. You could make one giant pizza if you're feeling like it, if you just love the combination of what we're working with here. And you wanna make sure that your rolling pin is also very much covered in flour because otherwise it'll stick. And then I like them as thin as possible. So we have a beautiful thin little flatbread guy. There's lots of really yummy gluten-free pizza doughs out there, and that I would just suggest to be your option. If you are gluten-free, just find and research your favorite pizza dough that is gluten-free. I know Capello's is one that's very, very well loved. All right, so I have 3 here that I'm gonna go ahead and already get into the oven because once they're rolled out, they start to stick quite well, and so it's just better to roll and top and get into the oven. So I have pumpkin butter and I have pumpkin puree. Just gonna stir that all together, and that's our sauce. So now I'm gonna take about a teaspoon at a time and dollop it onto the center of these flatbreads. And then you wanna kind of just spread out the pumpkin sauce base layer pretty thin. Pomegranate, molasses, caramelized onions. You can add them to so many things and they just add a delicious savory sweet flavor. And I just cooked down a really, really big red onion and some delicious butter and then added some pomegranate molasses. You could use balsamic if you don't have pomegranate molasses, and that pomegranate molasses adds a fruity tartness. The second to last ingredient for these pizzas or flatbreads or whatever they are is some smoked cheese. You can usually probably find at almost any grocery store would be smoked Gouda. That's a pretty popular smoky cheese. But I just think the smokiness, it just pairs so well with sweet. And last but not least are these beautiful sprigs, like 1 or 2 of sage, kind of like my fall time basil, pumpkin, caramelized onion, and smoked cheese sage flatbreads. So update, I kind of hate this cheese. It's not very cheesy. So whatever cheese I found, it's not a melting cheese. I learned that. So definitely get smoked Gouda if you can find some smoked Gouda, because that's way more of a melty cheese. But let's taste test mini little flatbread, perfect for the holiday season, with some sweet spiced pumpkin butter and gooey caramelized onions, smoky cheese, and a little bit of sage. Wow, these flatbreads are incredible. The perfect amount of smoky, sweet, all kinds of goodness. With the caramelized onions, oh my gosh, this is the best pairing ever. Oh, this is so delicious. I'm gonna go for this really cheesy bite. It's so good. You have to try these. For the 4th recipe, we are going to be making zeppole, which are donuts. And I know what you're thinking, Caroline, this is not like healthy, but like it is. Everything in moderation. I mean, we're making them healthier because we're baking them. But honestly, if you want a donut, eat a gosh darn donut and enjoy it and don't feel guilty for it and move on with your day, because the stress of eating a donut is more taxing on your body than the actual little donut. So anyways, that's my little spiel. So everything in moderation. Don't follow it up with another donut. Follow it up with some vegetables, a protein-packed lunch afterwards or something like that if you're having a mid-morning donut. Just try to balance it out, 80-20. But these donuts aren't even that bad. We're using such wholesome ingredients. If I could open up this or stick my finger in it. 4 ounces of some ricotta to the pumpkin puree. And I had the most perfect amount of pumpkin puree left. I had 14 ounces, which technically a can of pumpkin is 15 ounces. So a can of pumpkin would be perfect if you have just a can. Mixing together the ricotta and the pumpkin puree. I have 1 cup of butter here. Everything is at room temperature just to make for an even, silky smooth batter. Nothing cooks the eggs or nothing hardens. Kind of just want all your wet ingredients, rule of thumb when baking, to be kind of almost to room temperature, so that way it's a smooth batter. If you want to make this dairy-free, I suggest coconut yogurt per usual. If you don't want to use ricotta and you have Greek yogurt left over, go ahead and use Greek yogurt. Just some kind of yogurty dairy. kind of thing. Oh, and also for a dairy-free version of the melted butter, you could use vegan butter. You could also use coconut oil. Avocado oil is probably my most favorite plant-based oil to bake with because it's not nearly as strong flavored as olive oil or coconut oil, and it's a very healthy oil. So now I'm also going in with, or spilling everywhere, what's new? Brown sugar for that molasses, ambery, delicious flavor. I'm gonna go in with, speaking of ambery flavor, maple syrup. The last two wet ingredients are gonna be 2 large room temperature eggs. Just gonna pop those right into the mix. And 2. Leave it to Caroline to eyeball the vanilla. More is more. Stir this all together, and then you want to scrape the bottom and then pull it up to make sure that you're not getting any ingredients sticking to the bottom. Once you feel like you have a totally smooth mixture, and we're going to stir in the dry ingredients, which I made these gluten-free. I used oat flour because I had some already left over from those bars. Oat flour, all of the pumpkin pie spices galore, and baking soda, baking powder, a pinch of salt, just your typical dry ingredients. Could you make this into muffins? 1000%. You could make this into bread. This is basically a pumpkin bread recipe that I am putting in donut pans, if I'm being perfectly honest. Stir and lift to make sure you have no dry ingredients at the bottom. You don't want to overmix it. And we're going to transfer it to a giant gallon Ziploc baggie. So I'm going to take another bowl here. So I'm folding backward the seal of the Ziploc baggie, and I'm just going to pour the batter right in, so that way you see that the top isn't like coming in and folding over itself and making a huge mess. And now for the really, really fun part. So I have this grease donut pan. I'm gonna go ahead and close this batter in the Ziploc baggie. Snip the top. You want a little tiny opening at the top, maybe. I don't know, maybe not. There we go. And we're just gonna pipe the donuts like 2 ways around in the batter, and then just kind of pull it up like that. It's so simple. And just pipe it all around. And you want to make sure to put like the same amount of batter, so only go around twice for every donut, so that way they can all bake evenly. And it makes it so simple. You're not getting donut batter everywhere, or you're not making a huge mess. Perfect. Now we have the donuts ready to go into the oven.
After so much trial and error, I figured out the best way to coat these ciambelle or zeppole in that cinnamon sugar is to lightly spray them with some avocado oil. I tried dipping them in melted butter, but they just soaked up too much of that butter. They looked burnt, they were just too gooey, and I think just the right amount is spraying it, or you could even try to maybe brush on the oil and immediately dip it in that spiced sugar. Another thing that I really recommend is doing it right before you want to serve. You can bake them as far in advance as you want, but right before serving, you want to coat them in that sugar, because otherwise after a day or two, the sugar sits and the bread is so moist that it creates kind of this gooey thing, which isn't a bad thing, just isn't what you want.
This is the best pumpkin anything I've ever made. Pumpkin bread, pumpkin cake, whatever. Use this recipe to make your pumpkin delights. I mean, they're incredible. They're so good. Remind me not to put 4 recipes in one day ever again. I've been standing for 6 hours. All right, I'm so over food. These were incredible. I'm not even joking. This is the best pumpkin bread of all time that I've ever made. So delicious. All of these snacks were incredible. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got some kind of value out of this video, some kind of idea. You don't even have to use pumpkin. You can just take the inspiration of these recipes. Possibilities are endless. Hopefully I remembered to talk about enough variations, but if you ever have any questions of what you could substitute or what you could change out depending on what you like and what your preferences are, please feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know which recipe you're most excited to try. I love to hear from you guys. I love chatting with you guys. It makes my day. If you have any questions on the Mediterranean diet, the Mediterranean lifestyle in general, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I hope you create a very, very zestful day. Ciao.